Have you ever stopped and wondered which food secretly runs human civilization? No, it's not steak. Not sushi. Not kale. Definitely not kale. It's a lumpy brown object that spends most of its life buried in dirt. The potato. Think about it. Humans invented airplanes, smartphones, artificial intelligence, and robots that can vacuum the floor. Yet one of our favorite foods is still basically underground starch wearing different costumes. French fries? Potato. Potato chips? Potato. Mashed potatoes? Just potatoes that had a really rough day. Hash browns, samosas, tater tots, potato salad, curly fries, loaded fries, fries with cheese, fries pretending to be healthy because somebody sprinkled parsley on top. Still potatoes. The potato is less of a vegetable and more of a global business empire. Every day, billions of potatoes are eaten around the world. That's enough potatoes to build a giant carbohydrate mountain visible from space. And the weirdest part? Potatoes weren't even trying to become famous. Thousands of years ago, they were just strange little plants growing high in the Andes mountains, quietly minding their own business underground. Then humans discovered them and collectively said, "Yep, this one. Let's build civilization around this." Fast forward to today, potatoes grow in more than 100 countries. They feed billions of people. They appear at fancy restaurants. They appear at roadside food stalls. They somehow fit into both gourmet cuisine and late-night snacks. That's impressive range for something that literally grows in dirt. So the next time you grab a handful of fries, remember, you're not just eating a snack. You're participating in one of the greatest success stories in agricultural history. The humble potato.
So, what exactly is a potato? Most people would say, easy, it's a vegetable. And technically, that's correct. But scientifically, a potato is much weirder than that. For starters, the part we eat isn't a root. Surprise! It's actually a tuber, a special underground storage organ that plants use like a giant rechargeable battery. Imagine you're a potato plant. Winter is coming. Conditions are getting rough. Instead of panicking, you quietly bury a giant stash of emergency snacks underground. That's basically what a potato does. The plant spends months collecting sunlight and turning it into energy. Then it stuffs all that energy into a tuber beneath the soil. In other words, a potato is nature's version of a fully charged power bank. And it gets even stranger. Each potato contains tiny buds known as eyes. Those little dots aren't decoration. They're actually growth points. Give them soil, water, and a little patience, and they can grow into entirely new potato plants. That's right. A potato is basically a vegetable that can clone itself. No complicated instructions, no engineering degree required. Just cut, plant, wait. The potato handies the rest. Scientists classify potatoes as members of the nightshade family, which means they're surprisingly related to tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants. Family reunions must be confusing. One relative becomes ketchup, another becomes hot sauce, and the potato becomes French fries. Not bad for something that spends most of its life hiding underground. At first glance, a potato may look like a boring lump of starch, but underneath that dusty skin is a remarkable survival machine. A self-replicating, energy-storing underground invention that helped change the course of human history.
Long before French fries appeared in fast food restaurants, long before potato chips took over supermarket shelves, and long before somebody looked at a potato and thought, you know what this needs? More cheese. The potato lived a very different life. To find its origins, we need to travel nearly 10,000 years into the past and thousands of meters high into the Andes Mountains of South America. This is where the potato story begins. The Andes aren't exactly what you'd call easy farming territory. The air is thin.
The temperatures can swing wildly. The mountains are steep enough to make a goat question its life choices. Yet somehow, ancient communities turned these rugged mountains into one of the world's greatest agricultural laboratories. While other civilizations were experimenting with grains and livestock, the people of the Andes were busy testing potatoes. Lots of potatoes. Hundreds of varieties. Some were red, some were blue, some were purple. Some looked so strange that modern supermarkets would probably refuse to stock them. Over thousands of years, indigenous farmers carefully selected the best plants, the tastiest, the toughest, the ones that could survive cold nights and difficult conditions. Generation after generation, they transformed a wild mountain plant into a reliable food source. And they became incredibly good at it. In fact, even today, the Andes contain more potato diversity than anywhere else on Earth. Scientists can still find varieties there that most people have never seen. Tiny potatoes, giant potatoes, smooth potatoes, knobby potatoes. Potatoes that look like they were designed by a committee that never agreed on anything. For the people of the Andes, potatoes weren't just food. They were survival. They were culture. They were technology. They were civilization hidden underground. Long before the potato conquered.
By the 1500s, the potato had already mastered life in the Andes, but it was about to face its greatest challenge yet: Europe. The potato arrived with Spanish explorers returning from South America, and if you're imagining Europeans instantly celebrating this amazing new food, that's not what happened. Not even close. When Europeans first saw potatoes, many had absolutely no idea what to make of them. After all, it was a strange, lumpy object that grew underground. It wasn't mentioned in the Bible. It looked a little suspicious. And frankly, it wasn't winning any beauty contests. Some people believed potatoes could cause diseases. Others thought they were only suitable for animals. A few looked at the potato and essentially said, "I'm not eating that dirt nugget." The potato's public relations campaign was not going well. For decades, potatoes struggled to gain acceptance. Farmers planted them mostly as curiosities, wealthy people ignored them, and many ordinary people remained skeptical. Meanwhile, the potato sat quietly underground, thinking, "One day you'll realize how awesome I am." Then, reality stepped in. Europe's population was growing. Food shortages became more common. Wars disrupted agriculture, and traditional crops didn't always perform well. Suddenly, the strange underground vegetable started looking a lot more attractive. People discovered that potatoes could grow in poor soil. They produced large harvests. They survived conditions that made other crops miserable. Most importantly, they filled hungry stomachs. Slowly, the potato's reputation changed. What began as a suspicious foreign plant became a trusted food source. Kings promoted potato farming. Governments encouraged people to grow them. Some rulers practically became potato salesmen. Imagine your country's leader holding up a potato and saying, "Trust me, this is the future." By the 1700s and 1800s, the potato was no longer Europe's weird underground newcomer. It had become a superstar. And not because it tasted amazing, not because it looked beautiful, and definitely not because anyone thought potatoes were fashionable. The potato became famous because it was unbelievably efficient. Imagine you're a farmer. You have 1 acre of land. You can grow wheat, or you can grow potatoes. The wheat says, "I'll do my best." The potato says, "Stand back and watch this." Potatoes can produce far more calories per acre than many traditional crops. In simple terms, they create an incredible amount of food using relatively little land. For growing populations, that was a big deal. Actually, it was a huge deal. Cities were expanding. More mouths needed feeding, and the potato kept showing up with truckloads of carbohydrates. Well, not actual trucks. Those hadn't been invented yet, but you get the idea. The potato also had another superpower.
it wasn't picky. Poor soil? No problem. Cold weather? Manageable. Difficult growing conditions? The potato had seen worse in the Andes. While other crops sometimes struggled, potatoes often kept producing reliable harvests. To hungry families, that reliability was priceless. Soon, entire communities depended on them. Entire regions depended on them. Some historians even believe potatoes helped fuel major population growth across Europe. More food meant more people. More people meant more workers. More workers meant more cities, industries, and economic growth. In a strange way, the potato became one of history's most important technologies.
By the early 1800s, the potato had become one of Europe's greatest success stories. In Ireland, it was more than just food. It was life. Millions of people depended on potatoes every single day. Breakfast? Potatoes. Lunch? Potatoes. Dinner? You guessed it, more potatoes. The system worked remarkably well. Potatoes produced huge amounts of food from small plots of land. Families could survive and even thrive. But there was one hidden problem. Almost everyone was growing the same kinds of potatoes. Imagine a classroom where every student copies answers from the exact same person. If that one student makes a mistake, everybody fails the test. Nature was about to give a very harsh lesson in that concept. In the 1840s, a microscopic organism arrived in Ireland, a disease known as potato blight. At first, everything looked normal. Fields appeared healthy, farmers expected good harvests. Then, disaster struck. Leaves turned dark, plants began dying, potatoes underground started rotting before they could be harvested. Entire fields were devastated. It happened again, and again, and again. Year after year, crops failed. For families that depended almost entirely on potatoes, the consequences were catastrophic. Food became scarce. Hunger spread across the country. Many people were forced to leave their homes in search of survival. Ships carried migrants across oceans to new countries and new lives. The effects were felt far beyond Ireland. The Irish Potato Famine changed populations, changed economies, changed migration patterns, and ultimately changed history. Today, scientists view the Irish Potato Famine as one of the most important lessons in agriculture. The lesson? Never put all your potatoes in one basket. Well, not literally. The real lesson is diversity. When everyone grows the exact same crop, one disease can become a disaster. After surviving suspicion, conquering Europe, feeding millions, and even helping reshape history, the potato wasn't finished, not even close, because now it had a much bigger goal: world domination. Peaceful world domination, of course. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, potatoes were spreading far beyond Europe. They crossed oceans, traveled on ships, moved along trade routes, and quietly invaded dinner plates across the globe. Asia welcomed them. Africa welcomed them. North America expanded their cultivation. Even regions with completely different cuisines found ways to make potatoes feel at home. That's because potatoes have a special talent. They fit in almost anywhere. Rice cultures adopted potatoes. Bread cultures adopted potatoes. Spicy cuisines adopted potatoes. Mild cuisines adopted potatoes. The potato was basically the friend who gets invited to every party. Need a side dish? Potato. Need a snack? Potato. Need a filling meal? Also potato. Soon, farmers discovered that potatoes could grow in an astonishing variety of environments: cool climates, mountain regions, temperate zones, even places where other crops struggled. The potato simply unpacked its bags and got to work. Today, potatoes are grown in more than 100 countries around the world, from the mountains of South America to the plains of Asia, from African farms to North American fields. Billions of people eat potatoes every year, and most don't even think about it. That's how successful the potato became. It stopped being a foreign crop. It stopped being a European crop. It became everyone's crop. Very few foods in human history have spread so far, adapted so well, and become so deeply woven into everyday life. The
The potato started as a mountain plant hidden underground. Now it's one of the most recognized foods on Earth. Not bad for a vegetable that never even leaves the soil until somebody digs it up.
At this point, you might be wondering, why do humans love potatoes so much? What magical power does this lumpy underground vegetable possess? Did potatoes secretly hypnotize humanity? Not exactly. The answer is science. Delicious science. Let's start with energy. Your body runs on fuel, and potatoes are packed with carbohydrates, one of the body's favorite energy sources. Think of carbohydrates as tiny packets of usable fuel, and potatoes are basically nature's rechargeable batteries. Your ancestors didn't know the chemistry, but their stomachs definitely got the message. Then there's texture. Potatoes are culinary shapeshifters. Boil them, and they're soft. Bake them, and they're fluffy. Fry them, and suddenly they're crunchy little pieces of happiness. Very few foods can completely change personality depending on how they're cooked. Potatoes are basically the actors of the vegetable world. But the real magic happens when heat enters the story. Meet the Maillard reaction, a fancy scientific name for one of the greatest flavor-producing processes on Earth. When potatoes are cooked at high temperatures, sugars and amino acids begin reacting together. The result? Golden colors, amazing aromas, and flavors that make people say, "I'll just have one more fry," then accidentally eat 37. The Maillard reaction is responsible for the delicious crust on fries, chips, roasted potatoes, and countless other foods. It's one of the reasons humans have been falling in love with crispy potatoes for centuries. And here's another secret. Potatoes are flavor chameleons. They don't demand attention. They happily absorb herbs, spices, sauces, cheese, butter, and almost anything else humans throw at them. A potato can become French, Indian, Chinese, American, Peruvian, or almost any cuisine on Earth. That's a remarkable skill for something that starts life underground. So, the next time you reach for fries, chips, or mashed potatoes, remember, you're not just enjoying a snack. You're experiencing thousands of years of evolution, chemistry, and food science working together in perfect harmony. Or, to put it another way, your brain likes potatoes because science made them very hard to resist.
If potatoes had a resume, it would be absolutely ridiculous. Most vegetables have one job, maybe two. A carrot is a carrot. A cucumber is a cucumber. Nobody has ever looked at a cucumber and said, "You know what? Let's turn it into 17 completely different foods." But potatoes? Potatoes never stop reinventing themselves. Around the world, the same humble vegetable appears in hundreds of different forms, and somehow people keep finding new ways to transform it. Take French fries, thin strips of potato that became one of the most popular foods on Earth. Then there are potato chips, proof that humanity looked at fries and thought, what if we made them louder? Mashed potatoes took a different approach. Instead of becoming crispy, they became fluffy clouds of comfort. Then came hash browns, potato wedges, roasted potatoes, baked potatoes, potato pancakes, tater tots, and that's just the beginning. Travel around the world and the potato becomes even more impressive. In India, potatoes appear in samosas, curries, and countless street foods. In Peru, thousands of potato varieties are still enjoyed in traditional dishes. In Italy, potatoes become gnocchi, tiny dumplings that somehow convinced people they're pasta. In the United Kingdom, potatoes become fish and chips. In North America, they become loaded baked potatoes, covered in enough toppings to qualify as a construction project. The amazing thing is that every culture seems to look at a potato and see a new possibility. The potato doesn't complain. It doesn't demand creative control. It simply adapts again and again and again. Few foods in human history have had more career changes. From mountain survival crop to global culinary superstar, the potato has successfully played more roles than most Hollywood actors. Not bad for a vegetable that started underground and ended up everywhere.
At this point, the potato had conquered farms. It had conquered kitchens. It had conquered nearly every continent on Earth. Most vegetables would have retired at this stage. Not the potato. Apparently, world domination wasn't enough. The next target? Space. Yes, actual space. Scientists have long been interested in growing food beyond Earth, because if humans want to spend months, years, or even generations living away from our planet, they're going to need something to eat, preferably something more exciting than squeezing dinner out of a tube. This is where the potato enters the conversation. Again, potatoes are attractive to scientists for several reasons. They're nutritious, they produce lots of food in relatively small areas, and they're surprisingly efficient growers. In other words, potatoes are excellent roommates for future astronauts. Researchers have tested potatoes in controlled environments that mimic harsh conditions found on other worlds. Some experiments have even explored whether potatoes could grow in environments similar to Mars. Imagine being a potato. You start life in the Andes Mountains. Thousands of years later, scientists are asking, could you survive on another planet? That's one impressive career path. The potato's space fame received an extra boost from science fiction. In stories about Mars exploration, potatoes often appear as one of humanity's best chances for growing food on distant worlds. And honestly, that's very on brand. Whenever humans encounter a difficult environment, the potato somehow shows up and says, I can help. Will potatoes feed future colonies on Mars? Nobody knows for sure. But if humanity ever builds cities on another planet, don't be surprised if potatoes are among the first residents. After all, they've already conquered Earth. Why stop there? For a vegetable that spends its life underground, the potato has developed some surprisingly high ambitions. Maybe the final frontier isn't space. Maybe it's a potato field on Mars.
After thousands of years of success, the potato faces a new challenge: the future. For most of its history, the potato's biggest concerns were things like weather, pests, and avoiding becoming French fries. But the 21st century has introduced a whole new set of problems. Climate change is altering growing conditions around the world. Some regions are becoming hotter, others are becoming drier. Extreme weather events are becoming more common. And unfortunately, potato plants don't get to control the thermostat. Meanwhile, diseases continue to evolve. The descendants of the blights that once caused devastating famines are still out there, constantly changing and searching for opportunities. It's like an endless chess match between farmers and nature. Nature makes a move, humans respond. Nature makes another move, humans build a bigger laboratory. Fortunately, scientists aren't sitting around waiting for trouble. Around the world, researchers are developing new potato varieties designed to withstand heat, drought, pests, and disease. Some potatoes need less water, some grow faster, some are better suited to challenging environments. Think of them as upgraded versions of an already successful invention. Farmers are also getting help from technology. Drones monitor fields from the sky. Satellites track crop health from space. Sensors measure soil conditions with incredible precision. If ancient Andean farmers could see modern potato farming, they'd probably think potatoes had hired an entire team of superheroes. And then there's genetic research. Scientists are studying potato DNA to better understand how these plants survive, adapt, and resist disease. The goal isn't just bigger harvests, it's making sure potatoes can continue feeding billions of people in a changing world. Because here's the thing, the potato isn't just a vegetable anymore. It's part of the global food system, a food source relied upon by millions of families every single day. The future of the potato is really a story about the future of food itself. And if history has taught us anything, it's this: never underestimate the potato. For 10,000 years, it has adapted, survived, and reinvented itself. There's a very good chance it isn't finished yet.